Dad's 66th birthday was supposed to be simple. Just dinner, a cake from the bakery down the street, and the usual family noise filling the dining room. I remember the smell first. Roasted chicken, garlic, the lemon cleaner Mom always used on the table right before guests arrived. The overhead light was a little too bright, bouncing off the old framed photos we'd never taken down. We were all seated when my brother Ethan stood up. He tapped his glass with the back of a spoon, smiling like he was about to make a toast he'd rehearsed. Ethan always rehearsed things. "So," he said, stretching the word, "I've got some news." I didn't look at him right away. I kept my hands folded in my lap and stared at the edge of my plate. I already felt that quiet tightening in my chest, the one that usually meant something was about to shift, whether I liked it or not. Dad leaned forward, interested. Mom smiled before Ethan even finished the sentence. Ethan had that effect on them. "At your age," Ethan continued, "it makes sense to simplify things. Bigger picture, smarter moves." He paused. "Let the room lean in. We're buying a place outside the city," he said. "More space, better schools for the kids, and we want you and Mom to come live with us." Chairs scraped. Someone laughed softly. My aunt murmured, "That's wonderful." I stayed quiet. Dad blinked, surprised, but flattered. "Live with you?" "With an in-law suite," Ethan said quickly. "Separate entrance, full privacy, it's perfect." Mom reached for Dad's hand. Then Ethan turned his head slightly, just enough to look at me. "And since that means this house won't be needed anymore," he said casually, "it's time to put it on the market." The words landed heavier than he intended, or maybe exactly as intended. I felt my stomach drop, but I didn't react. I'd learned a long time ago that silence made people uncomfortable faster than arguments ever could. "We can get a great price," Ethan went on. "Market's strong. This neighborhood's finally hot. We move fast. Everyone wins." I finally looked up. This house wasn't just a house to me. It was where I'd moved back after my divorce. Where I'd slept on the couch the first few weeks because my old room still smelled like dust and boxes. Where I'd been helping Dad recover since his heart attack the previous fall. I lived here. Ethan lifted his glass again, smiling wider now. "So," he said, eyes still on me, "start packing. Not loudly, not aggressively, just enough for everyone to hear." Laughter followed. Glasses clinked. Someone said, "New beginnings." No one asked me a single question. No one asked where I'd go, or how soon, or whether I'd even known this conversation was coming. Mom nodded slowly. "It's probably good for her," she said. "She needs a push." Ethan shrugged. "She's 33. It's time." I sat there, very still, listening to the hum of conversation rise around me. Plans forming, numbers being thrown out, renovations imagined. And that's when something small, quiet, and very specific settled into place in my mind. A phone call I'd made months earlier, a set of documents I hadn't looked at in a while, a detail no one else at that table knew existed. I stood up without saying anything. "I need some air," I said. No one stopped me. The porch was cool, the wood worn smooth under my feet. I sat down on the top step and took out my phone. I didn't scroll. I didn't hesitate. I tapped one name. Then I waited. The call connected before the second ring finished. "Hey," he said, calm, alert, the same way he always sounded. "What's going on?" I didn't answer right away. I watched the porch light flicker once, then steady. Inside, someone laughed. A chair scraped. The party was still going. "I need you to pull a property record," I said, quietly. There was a short pause. Not surprise, just attention shifting. "Address?" "17 Oak Ridge Drive." I heard a keyboard. The soft, steady kind. "Give me a second." While he worked, I leaned back against the porch railing and let myself remember how I'd ended up here. After my divorce, I hadn't moved home because I failed. I moved home because my life needed fewer variables. I needed predictability, a place where I could think clearly and rebuild without an audience. Then Dad's heart attack happened. Hospital bills came fast. Rehab costs followed. I noticed the unopened mail first, then the late notices tucked into a drawer, then the call from the bank that wasn't meant for me but reached me anyway because I was listed as an emergency contact. That was when I learned the truth. They were behind. Not a little. Not temporarily. Months. Too proud to tell anyone. Too scared to ask for help. Still pretending everything was fine. I didn't confront them. I didn't lecture. I didn't panic. I asked questions, quiet ones. I made calls, careful ones. And when the foreclosure notice came, I acted. Not emotionally, logistically. The man on the phone cleared his throat. Okay, he said. I see it. What do you see? I asked. The property hasn't been in your parents' names for over a year. I closed my eyes. Ownership transferred through foreclosure, he continued. Purchased by an LLC, Clearwater Ridge Holdings. I exhaled slowly through my nose. And any liens? I asked. None active. Mortgage was satisfied at auction. Good, I said. That's what I needed. There was a longer pause this time. You already know this, he said carefully. Yes. And your brother doesn't? No. Inside, someone raised their voice, excited, planning something that didn't belong to them. I'll send you the updated deed and title confirmation, he said. Anything else? Yes, I said. If anyone tries to list that house this week, I want it stopped. Understood. The call ended without drama, without questions, without judgment. I put the phone face down beside me and stayed on the porch a little longer. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt the way they probably expected. I was clear. Inside, Ethan was still talking, explaining timelines, talking about square footage and resale value, confident in a plan built on assumptions no one had checked. I let him finish. When I stood up, I brushed my hands against my jeans once, slow and deliberate, like I was stepping into a meeting instead of back into a family dinner. I opened the door. The room quieted just a little when they noticed me. Not because they were worried, because they assumed I was about to fold. I walked back to my chair, didn't sit, and waited for the conversation to catch up to me. That was the moment I decided I wouldn't argue. I would clarify. And then I waited. Ethan noticed first. He always did when attention shifted away from him. There she is, he said lightly. Feeling better? I didn't answer right away. I pulled my chair back and sat down slowly, the legs scraping just enough to cut through the chatter. The room followed the sound. I need to say something, I said. Mom sighed before I finished the sentence. Please don't make this into a scene. I'm not, I said, and I meant it. Ethan leaned back, arms crossed. If this is about timing, we can talk logistics later. It's not about timing, I said. I took my phone out, unlocked it, and placed it flat on the table between us. Not to show anything yet, just to mark the shift. I asked a real estate attorney a question tonight, I said. A very simple one. Dad looked up. Why? Because I wanted to understand what happens, I said, when someone tries to sell a house they don't legally own. The word own landed heavier than the rest. Ethan laughed. A short, confident sound. What are you talking about? I looked at him. Not challengingly, not defensively, just directly. This house, I said, isn't available to sell. Mom frowned. Of course it is. This is our house. It was, I said gently. Silence crept in, slow and unsure. Dad straightened in his chair. What do you mean, was? I didn't rush. I'd learned that people heard difficult things better when they were given space to arrive at them. The mortgage default wasn't resolved, I said. The payment plan you thought you had didn't go through. Mom shook her head immediately. That's not true. The foreclosure proceeded, I continued. The property went to auction. Ethan stopped smiling. That's impossible, he said. We would have known. You would have been notified, I said. But only the named owners. Dad's face had gone pale now. Alex, he said slowly, why are you saying this? Because there was no point softening it anymore. Because this house hasn't been in your name for 14 months, I said. No one spoke. The refrigerator hummed. The clock above the doorway clicked forward. Ethan looked at Mom, then Dad. Say something. Mom opened her mouth, then closed it again. Dad swallowed. If that were true, he said, voice tight, then who owns it? I picked up my phone and slid it toward him. I do. It didn't explode the room the way confessions do in movies. It collapsed it. Ethan stared at me like he was waiting for the punchline. You? Yes. With what money? He asked. My divorce settlement, I said. Most of it. Jennifer's hand flew to her mouth. Dad pushed the phone back toward me slowly, like it might bite. You bought our house? I bought the house, I said. So you wouldn't lose it. Mom's eyes filled before she spoke. Why didn't you tell us? Because you were already carrying enough, I said. And because this wasn't about credit, it was about stability. Ethan stood up abruptly. You let us think. I let you live here, I said calmly, the same way you always had. He looked around the room, searching for support, for disbelief, for someone to call me out. No one did. That was the first time I saw uncertainty replace confidence on his face. And that was when the room finally understood something had shifted. No yelling, no speeches, just facts, sitting where assumptions used to be. Then I waited. The room didn't erupt right away. It hovered. Mom sat frozen, one hand pressed flat against the table. Dad stared at the wood grain like it was moving. Ethan paced once, then stopped, then paced again. This doesn't make sense, he said. You can't just do that. I didn't just do it, I said. I followed a process. That word mattered. I leaned back slightly, keeping my voice even. There are steps to these things. No one interrupted me this time. Step 1, I said, was confirming the default and the timeline. I needed to know how close things were. Dad closed his eyes briefly. He didn't argue. Step 2 was making sure the debt could be cleared completely, I continued. No partial fixes, no temporary relief. Mom's shoulders sagged. Step 3 was protecting occupancy, I said, which meant keeping everything quiet. No panic, no forced moves. Ethan stopped pacing. So you just hit it? I managed it, I said. There's a difference. Jennifer spoke up, her voice thinner now. So what happens to us? I looked at her. Nothing changes for you. She frowned. But the house isn't part of your plans, I said. It never was. Ethan slammed his palm lightly against the back of a chair, not hard enough to be violent, hard enough to release pressure. We already talked to a realtor, he said. She's ready to list. I know, I said. That got his attention. I sent a cease notice tonight, I added. Any listing without my authorization will be stopped before it goes live. The word stopped hung in the air. Dad looked up sharply. You planned for this? I prepared for it, I said. Those are different things. Mom wiped her eyes. All this time? You were paying for everything? I covered the property, I said. You covered living. No one accused me anymore. The energy had shifted from outrage to recalculation. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. So what? You're just going to pull the rug out from under us? I shook my head. You pulled it out from under yourselves when you made plans without asking questions. That's not fair, he said. I'm not asking you to agree, I said. I'm explaining reality. Silence again. Dad finally spoke, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. You saved the house. Yes. And we've been treating you like you were stuck here. Yes. He nodded slowly, like something was aligning in his mind that had been crooked for a long time. Ethan's jaw tightened. So, what now? I folded my hands in front of me. Now we reset the conversation. He scoffed. You think you get to set the rules? I already did, I said gently, when I made sure everyone still had a roof. That was the moment Ethan realized there was no argument left to win, only consequences to choose from. He looked at Mom and Dad. So what are you saying? Dad stood up slowly, using the table for balance. I'm saying, he said, that we've been wrong about who was taking care of whom. No one moved. No one interrupted. The room was very still, and for the first time that night, no one was talking about selling anything. I sat back and let the silence finish what I didn't need to say. Ethan was the one who broke the silence. So you're really doing this, he said. You're choosing to blow up everything over paperwork. I looked at him. This isn't about paperwork. Then what is it? He asked, frustration finally pushing through. Control? No, I said. Boundaries. That word landed differently. Mom sat down slowly, like her legs had given out. Dad stayed standing, one hand on the chair back, steadying himself. You didn't ask, I continued. You didn't check. You didn't consider that I live here, that I've been caring for Dad, that this house is more than a number on a listing. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. I didn't raise my voice, I said. I didn't embarrass you. I didn't stop you in front of everyone when you told me to pack my bags. Jennifer shifted uncomfortably. But now, I said, we're going to be clear. I turned slightly, enough to include the whole table. This house is not for sale, I said. Not this year, not next, not unless I decide otherwise. Ethan scoffed. So that's it? You just decide everything now? I decide what happens to my property, I said, the same way you would. Dad finally spoke. Ethan, he said quietly, you never asked how we were managing. Ethan turned to him. You didn't say anything. We were ashamed, Dad said. And you were busy. That stung. I could tell by the way Ethan's shoulders tightened. Jennifer tried again. We were planning a future that included you. A future that required selling something that wasn't yours, I said. Ethan's voice rose despite himself. So what are we supposed to do now? I didn't answer right away. I let the moment settle. Now, I said, you adjust your plans to match reality. That's easy for you to say, he snapped. I already adjusted mine, I said. A long time ago. The words weren't sharp. They didn't need to be. Ethan looked at Mom and Dad. You're really okay with this? Dad stepped closer to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. The gesture was small, but it shifted the room. We're okay with the truth, he said. And with the person who acted when we couldn't. Mom stood and joined us, tears still on her cheeks. We chose wrong, she said softly, for a long time. Ethan stared at them, then at me. So, you're picking her, he said. We're picking responsibility, Dad replied. That was the moment Ethan lost the room. He exhaled sharply, grabbed his jacket, and turned toward the door. Fine, he said. If that's how it is, don't expect us to just pretend this didn't happen. I wouldn't, I said. He paused, waiting for me to say more. I didn't. The door closed behind him. Jennifer followed a moment later without looking back. The house felt different after that. Quieter, heavier, but also clearer. We didn't chase them. We didn't argue after the fact. We sat down. And for the first time that night, we talked about what was real. Then we stopped talking altogether. And that was enough. The house stayed quiet after they left. Not the awkward kind. The settled kind that comes after something heavy has finally been set down. Dad lowered himself into the armchair by the window. Mom sat on the couch, hands folded, staring at the floor like she was replaying the last few years all at once. I should have told you, I said. From the beginning. Dad shook his head slowly. No, we should have noticed. He looked up at me. You were here every day, driving me to appointments, fixing things around the house, paying for groceries when we said we'd handle it. Mom let out a small, broken laugh, and we told ourselves you were stuck. That was easier than admitting we were, Dad said. I didn't argue. This wasn't the moment for it. A few days later, the paperwork arrived by mail. Thick envelope, official stamps, dates lined up in clean, unforgiving rows. Dad read every page, twice. Mom cried again, but this time it was quieter. Relief mixed with regret. So we don't owe anything? She asked. No, I said. The house is clear. And you're not asking us to leave, Dad said carefully. No, I said again. That was never the plan. He nodded, eyes glossy. Then we stay, and we do better. Ethan didn't call right away. When he did, his voice sounded smaller, slower. I was wrong, he said. No excuses this time. I didn't ask, I assumed. I know, I said. There was a pause. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. No, I agreed. You shouldn't have. Another pause, longer. I don't expect things to just go back, he said. They won't, I said, but they can move forward. We set rules, clear ones, about respect, about decisions, about what wasn't his to plan anymore. He accepted them, not gracefully, but honestly. Life didn't snap back into place after that. It realigned. Dad's health improved once the stress lifted. He started working in the yard again. Mom stopped flinching when the mail arrived, and the house stayed exactly where it was, unlisted, unmoved, quietly held. One evening, weeks later, Dad sat beside me on the porch, the same steps where I'd made that phone call. You know, he said, success isn't what I thought it was. I waited. It's not the biggest house, he continued. It's the person who steps in when everything's about to fall apart. I didn't answer right away. I just sat there with him, listening to the night settle around us, and for the first time in a long time, nothing felt like it was about to be taken away. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that. It became quieter, more intentional. Mornings settled into routines, coffee at the same kitchen table, Dad reading the paper out loud like he used to, Mom reorganizing cabinets that didn't really need it, just because she could. I stayed, not because I had nowhere else to go, because this was where things finally made sense. Every so often, Ethan would stop by with the kids. At first, the visits were stiff, short, polite in that careful way people are when they're trying not to reopen something sharp. Over time, it softened. He asked before making suggestions now. He listened more than he talked. It wasn't a full transformation, just progress, realistic and earned. One afternoon, while I was sorting old files into labeled folders, Dad watched me for a while from the doorway. "You always did this," he said. "Did what?" I asked. "Handled things quietly," he replied, "without needing anyone to notice." I smiled, but didn't say anything. That night, I wiped down the counters, turned off the lights, and put the house to sleep the same way I always had. Calm, orderly, protected. A week later, a friend called me about her aunt. Different city, different family, same pattern, assumptions, silence. Someone making plans they didn't fully understand. I listened, and I realized something. Situations like this aren't rare. They're just rarely talked about until someone gets hurt. If you're listening to this and something about it feels familiar, you're not alone. And sometimes, clarity doesn't come from shouting or proving a point. Sometimes it comes from patience, from paperwork, from knowing when to stay quiet and when to speak once, clearly. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps this space reach people who might need it. And I'd love to know, what city are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? I read the comments, and it's always grounding to see how far these stories travel. 2 more popular stories are coming up next, and I think you'll find something familiar in them too. Thanks for spending this time with me.